morning, the last day of our Italian retreat, we have the great opportunity to be able to invoke the name of the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara is the great being who has the capacity to listen deeply to the suffering of the world and to bring relief by that listening deeply and by the sending of the energy of compassion. The energy of compassion that the Sangha is able to generate can be very powerful, and it can reach the place we want it to reach in a very short time. So today we want to practice to bring all our concentration and our mindfulness into the present moment in order to be able to create that energy together. We know that in each one of us there is that capacity to listen deeply, and as the result of our listening deeply, to give rise to compassion. And we also know that the first person, the first being who needs our compassion is ourself, who needs the compassion of the Sangha is ourself. We should recognize that. We all have suffering in us. The brothers and sisters who are chanting also have suffering within them. We have it. And we will practice as we chant to send the energy of compassion to ourselves, to listen deeply to our own suffering. And when we have done that, we know that we can also listen deeply to the suffering in the world. So with the first evocation of the name of Avalokiteshvara, we come back to ourselves. We feel that we need compassion, and we send that compassion to ourselves. And with the second evocation, we know that those who live with us in our own household, in our community, also have suffering. Those who are with us now. And we want to send the energy of the Sangha's compassion to those people. And thirdly, we want our compassion, the compassion of the Sangha, the deep listening of the Sangha, to go out into the world. And this morning, I think we want our energy to go to India. We direct our mind to the east, and we send together our energy to all those who are suffering from COVID in India, where the situation is very bad, and the medical services have broken down. So it is indeed a moment of great strength, togetherness, strength, reciting the name of Avalokiteshvara. If you find the tears fall from your eyes during the recitation, remember these are the tears of compassion, and the world also needs your tears of compassion. You also need your tears of compassion. They can be very healing. A thought of compassion can heal ourselves and can heal the world. Thank you for your practice. Caro Thầy, cara Sangha, oggi siamo the 9th of May, 2021. Yeah, and we're going to enjoy 3 sounds of the bell. It's very nice to be in Italy with you. So we will enjoy the present moment. Come back to the here and now. Open our heart. Listen deeply to the sound of the bell as it reverberates in our own heart. The sound of the bell is the voice of the Buddha, the awakened one, within ourselves, calling us back to our true home. dear Sangha. We just enjoyed giving rise to the energy of compassion within us, within the Sangha. And we saw how important it is to come back to ourselves and recognize our own suffering. In the fourth mindfulness training of the Order of Interbeing, the 14 mindfulness trainings, we practice aware that looking deeply at the nature of suffering can help us develop understanding and compassion. We are determined to come home to ourselves, to recognize, accept, embrace, and listen to our own suffering with mindfulness. So here we see clearly that this is the first very important step. And while we were chanting, we also saw that it's not something we do once and then forget about. We may come back to ourselves and take care of our suffering, and then feel we have the capacity to go out and listen deeply to the suffering of others. But after that, we also need to come back again and take care of our own suffering. So this is a lifelong practice for us. One time, someone asked Thai, why do we destroy our environment? Why do we discriminate against people of different color? Why can't we stop doing these things? And Thai replied, it's because we have so much suffering within ourselves, and we have not yet been able to take care of that suffering. So obviously we cannot take care of the suffering around us. Another time, a journalist asked Thai, after she had finished interviewing Thai, she asked, please give me some instruction for my personal practice. And Thai said, go home and take care of yourself. And the journalist didn't understand and went and bought an air ticket to fly back to her own country. But Thai didn't mean that. Thai meant come back to your home within yourself. No need to go somewhere else. Your home is not in a specific place. So one of our practices is to come back to ourself, which means come back to the island of self, come back to our 5 skandhas. The Buddha taught us at the end of the Buddha's life to come back to the island of ourself, to take refuge in the island of ourself. And the word for island in Sanskrit is dvipa, and dvi means 2, and apa means water, and an island for the Buddha was like an island in the middle of the Ganges River, with water going on both sides of the island out to the sea. And We want to come back to our own island and not be washed away by the water on both sides of us. And so it's like when we come back sometimes into our room, the place where we live, and we see that it's, maybe you could say, in a mess. Things lying around where they shouldn't be. And when we come back to the island of ourself, we may also see, oh, there's quite a mess here in our 5 skandhas. And so that isn't a bad thing. Normally the reason we don't come back to the island of ourself is because it's not very pleasant. But now we see that it's good. We've come back and we've recognized the situation just as it is, and we can take care of the situation just as it is. So that is a wonderful opportunity for us. And our self is made up of the 5 skandhas: our body, our feelings, our perceptions, our mental formations, our consciousness. And they are all things, they were all parts of us that are like 5 rivers, always flowing, always changing. And we come back and we sit on the bank of the river and we take care. First of all, we take care of our body. We recognize the discomfort, the tension in our body, and we can take care of it. And then we take care of our feelings, changing at every minute, and to take care of our thoughts, coming up from the consciousness constantly. So this is our practice of being an island unto ourself, coming back to ourself, taking care of our own suffering. And when we listen to ourselves, we may find that there is a child in us, a wounded child who has suffered and continues to suffer. But we didn't have time to listen to him, to her. But now every day we can give ourselves some time to listen to that child who was wounded by harsh words, who may have been abused, who didn't understand what was going on. That child has not disappeared. That child is there and needs our listening deeply, needs our compassion every day. And at the same time we recognize that now I am an adult. Now I know more, I understand more what is happening. So I can be in a position to have strength and comfort the child within me. And when we can every day take care of our own suffering, it means that every day we can take care of the suffering of those around us. It can be very simple ways that we help those around us suffer less. The very fact that we've taken care of our own suffering is already the beginning to taking care of the suffering of the others. When you leave your apartment, you leave your home, the first person you see, whatever color that person might be, whatever that person looks like, you can look at with the eyes of compassion. You can smile too. And that look, that smile, may change the day of that person. So our showing of compassion doesn't have to begin in very major, very big ways. And then there are sufferings that in the world that we know about, and we want to relieve those sufferings. But we know that on our own, we do not have the capacity to do that. And that is why we have Sangha. That is why we have community. So we can come together in order to have that enough strength to go and help difficult situations in the world around us, to help the environment, to help those who suffer from racial discrimination. We need to do that as a body, as a collective, where we all have our drops of compassion to add to the river, the lake of compassion that is needed to transform these situations. And of course there will be a critical point, what is called a tipping point, when there are enough of us to change the situation, when our numbers are great enough. If you look at the United Nations and what it can do to relieve suffering in the world, you may see that, well, it's not very much. In fact, as nations, we don't have much compassion. It seems that we're just out for the best thing for our nation. If there's a river running between our nation and another nation, we want all the water for our side. We don't think about sharing the water with the other side. We feel there won't be enough. Or we don't think letting the other side of the river have the water. So this situation is when we come together as collective, as a country, we don't seem to have that much compassion. And that is because we haven't reached that tipping point yet with enough of us. As a metaphor that I enjoy very much, it's about a place, and that place can be hungry ghost realm, or it can be heaven, paradise. And in that place there is at meal times there is a table, and on the table there are many dishes that you can eat. And the people sitting around the table, they have fastened to their hand a spoon. And the spoon is very, very long handle. So when they reach out to take some food, they can't bring it back and put it in their mouth because of the handle's too long. So some of that people in that land, they feel very hungry because there's no way to get the food. So that's one way, and that will make it a hungry ghost realm, make it a hell realm. But then there are others who use their spoon, they take the food and they put in the mouth of the person sitting opposite them. So I receive food from someone else. So that is heaven. That is where we take care of each other. And a meal can be where we're taking care of each other, can be heaven. So that is what we need, like in the United Nations, that we are feeding each other by listening deeply to the suffering of the other nations and trying to find ways to help. We know that Thai has told us what we need most of all is brotherhood and sisterhood. Sometimes we need to have a meeting. We need to change something. We need to go in a new direction. And that meeting is what we call brainstorming. And everyone in the meeting can just say what they feel would be the best thing to go in this new direction. We don't come to any decision. We just listen to everybody's idea. And many different ideas come up, which shows we are all a little bit individual cells. But individual cells, they need to do things together, work together. And during that brainstorming, you change your idea. When you came in, you had an idea. You put it into, I don't know if I like the word storm very much. So you put it into the storm. Can we find a better word than brainstorm? I think we can, but I haven't found it. So anyway, you put it into the collective consciousness of the people who are there. And then they put their idea into the collective consciousness. And together, without making any effort, those ideas manage to fuse together, and we can see the way ahead, the best way ahead. This is a little bit like ants when they want to make a big hill where they live, like the termites, sometimes as much as 3 meters high. They come together with a lot of confusion, all running together, and then they drop bits of what their building material on top of each other, and then when they see that, oh, these bits of building material are beginning to grow into something, they will come together and continue to make a column or an arch or whatever they need for their house. There's no boss. It just happens. And that is brotherhood. That is sisterhood. There isn't a boss. But we come together with an ideal to go in an upward direction and help the world suffer less. And then just contribute what we have to contribute. One meditation that I enjoy very much is the metta meditation, which Thai has given us. And that meditation, metta, it means friendliness, it means loving kindness. And that meditation we can direct to ourselves to begin with. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be light in my body and in my consciousness. Have you ever dreamt of being happy? Have you ever felt deep happiness? If you have, then you know you can feel it again. You know you have the capacity to be deeply happy. And deep happiness is not hearing that you've passed the exams, is not having a new house, is not even hearing that the person you love also loves you, but deep happiness is not necessarily having a good meal, enjoying a good meal. But, as we said before, enjoying a meal with the Sangha in mindfulness can be deep happiness. To experience freedom throughout the meal and to feel the presence of your brothers and your sisters, of your Sangha around you as you eat. And just eating in order to eat in the present moment is paradise, is heaven. It doesn't have to be a very special meal at all. So when you look at may I be happy, remember the times when you have felt happy and know that that is available to you and that is what you want. We wish ourselves that. I know that's what I want. I want to be happy. And if I want to be happy, then I know that's what other people want. I often have to remind myself what conditions I have for being happy. Sometimes when I don't feel physically well, I'm inclined to concentrate more on what is going wrong. And so I need to remind myself of things I have to be happy. And my 2 feet that are able to walk bring me much happiness. Just remembering that these 2 feet can walk. Because while I'm walking, I've had so much happiness. Not going on a hike, climbing up the mountain, although that can be happy, but walking into the present moment, that is being 100% there with each step, without being any thought of the past or the future, feeling the presence of the universe in me and around me, that is a very deep happiness. So my 2 feet bring me happiness. And my eyes, how many times have I looked at the infinite vault of the sky, that precious atmosphere that surrounds our planet, and and felt such great happiness. So I have to remind myself of those things in order to not get carried away by what is going wrong. And Thai told us about the garden. And in the garden there are many trees. And people fall sick, and all our attention to that tree. Every time we go into the garden, we just look at that tree. But there are many other trees that are doing very well, and we don't give them the same attention. Please remember to hug a tree. When we use Wi-Fi a great deal, we can absorb a lot of waves, electronic waves. And we need some earth. We need to earthed again. And so we hug a tree. But we don't just hug the tree because we want to be earthed again. We hug the tree because we see that it is a wonderful manifestation of life, and we want to feel its energy, and we want the tree to feel our energy. And even scientists say that the tree can feel our energy, can feel some kind of vibration from us, just as we feel vibration from the tree. So the next thing we need to do is to recognize that we want to be peaceful. We want to be free of restlessness and agitation. We want to have that peace of mind which we've experienced. And if we want that, other people must want it too. This is the peace that surpasses understanding, the peace that goes beyond words. And that peace can be in our body and can be in our mind. In the recent research done by biologists, it's very clear that our body and our mind are not two separate entities. Our nervous system, our immune system, our cardiovascular system, all these systems in ourselves, they are like a network connecting with each other. So feeling happy in our body, feeling happy in our mind, in our spirit also. After that, we want to wish ourselves to be safe and to be free from accident. And you may say that, how can we possibly be safe? How can we possibly be free from accident? The very nature of life is insecurity. How can we wish to have security? But if we look deeply into our own consciousness, we will see that that is what we want most of all. We want to be safe. We want to be secure. And if we want that, other people will want that too. So what we have to recognize here is not that, oh, it's possible to be safe or secure, but to recognize that is what I want. I want safety. I want security. And we know that the practice of mindfulness is the thing that can keep us most safe It's rare to have an accident when you are practicing mindfulness. But we also know that sooner or later we will fall sick. We cannot always, we will get old. We recognize that, but we recognize our deep desire for security. And when we've recognized that in ourselves, we can realize that other people also have that deep desire. The next thing that we want for ourselves is, may I be free from anger. May I be free from fear. May I be free from anxiety. These strong emotions. And we also have a meditation where we say, breathing in, I'm in touch with anger in me. And breathing out, I smile to the anger. Breathing in, I'm in touch with anxiety in me. Breathing out, I smile to the anxiety. And one time, someone in my Dharma sharing group said, it's a very difficult meditation for me to do, because I'm not an anxious person. I don't feel anxiety. So when you sit in the meditation hall, and you are told, breathing in, I'm in touch with anxiety, and you sit in meditation hall, you feel very safe. So you think, how can I do this meditation? But the thing is that anxiety is not an individual matter. Anxiety is maybe a sickness of our time. Anxiety is everywhere in the collective consciousness. And if you look deeply, you will realize that it is in you, the collective consciousness in you. And that very often in the day, anxiety may come up, but you don't really recognize it. Because when it starts to show its face, you immediately do something to ignore it. So you may take a biscuit out of the biscuit tin to eat. You may turn on the television. You may pick up your telephone. You do something to ignore the anxiety. And now when you are sitting in meditation, you recognize, yes, I can feel anxiety. You may think of a time, a situation you were in the past when anxiety came up, and you remember that. And during the day, you may like to recognize when you are anxious and when you are not anxious. Because in the Satipatthana Sutta, it tells us we should not only recognize the unwholesome mental formations, we should also recognize when they're not there. So we can be anxious many times during the day. And that anxiety needs us to recognize it. Because if we don't recognize it, and every time anxiety arises, we do something to avoid it, then it will become stronger. But if it knows that it's being recognized, then it will It won't try to make itself heard so much. So we have been human beings, I don't know how many million years, but not so very long. And before we were human beings, we were many other things. And when we first had Darwin, the evolution, we used to think that we've been there since the time that complex mammals had been around. But now with microbiology, we realize we've been there probably for billions of years, not millions of years, in bacteria and things that were there before many-celled animals were there. So there's a very long history for us. But when we've been animals in our evolution, we have been in very dangerous situations where we could be gobbled up by another animal at any moment. And so we have to keep looking around, make sure that we're not going to be gobbled up. And so that needs a certain amount of anxiety. Just to keep reminding you, look around, make sure there's nothing behind you. Well, now we aren't in that situation. But we still have that overreaction to keep worrying about things that are imagined and not really going to happen. That is why we have to keep training ourselves to be aware of anxiety and not to develop it, but to help transform it into something else. Is much better for our health. And going along with anxiety is fear. Fear is a stronger kind of anxiety. And we have to recognize that what does it feel like not to have any fear? And because our brain is able to look at these things, we can put ourselves in a situation where we are completely free from fear. And in our meditation we can feel the freedom from the fear. And none of us want to be angry, because when we are angry, we suffer, and we make other people suffer. And we need to look deeply into the last time we were angry and ask ourselves, what is it that made me angry? What is it that watered that seed? If we want to be free from anger, we have to understand anger. Was it the seed of fear? Maybe the fear that somebody was going to destroy us. Destroy any of our 5 skandhas. Not just destroy our body, but destroy our ideas, or destroy our self-image. We can become angry because of that. And that anger is rooted in fear. The fear of not surviving. But surviving has become a very complex thing. It's not just anymore my body surviving. It's the survival of my self-image. It's the survival of my ideas, and so on. So we want to understand and be free from these things. And now I have to refer a little bit to 2 questions that were asked yesterday and not answered about, I don't think were answered, about expressing anger. when I'm angry, it feels good to be able to express my anger, as long as it's not too aggressive. So express your anger, but it's not too aggressive. So I think it might feel good, but afterwards you look deeply. Is it really productive? Is it really beneficial? It helped me let off steam. But did it make the other person feel good? And the answer, if I express myself when I'm angry, the answer when I look back afterwards is always, yes, I did feel better, but the other people didn't feel better. So I don't want to do that. The most I want to do is to say, dear friend, I'm angry. So please let me go outside and practice walking meditation. And we'll sit down together and talk about it later on, when I've calmed down. So may I be free from anger. That doesn't mean to say the seed of anger isn't there anymore. It's still come up, but I know how to take care of it. I know how to smile to it. We overreact. Microbiologists have done research, and they see that our immune system also overreacts. Sometimes there is something that comes into our body, and the cells in our body, they react very strongly against it and try to destroy it. But actually that substance that came into our body is not harmful in itself to our body. So all the microbiologists can say is that in the past, when you know that most of our body is not our body, things have a different DNA from our body. Well, in the past, those things that we call us now, that substance must have been harmful. And so now, even though it's not harmful to us human beings as we are now, when that substance comes in touch with our cells, they react against it because millions of years ago, it would have been harmful to them. So that is sometimes like what we do as human beings. We overreact. It's just a small thing, and we make it into something big, and that makes us suffer. Because when the antibodies overreact like that, it's that makes us sick. It's the reaction of our antibodies. So we have to know that this reaction is inappropriate, and go outside and take care of it. And then after a while, walking meditation for 20 minutes, you will see, my goodness, that reaction was really overreacting. And now I can come and talk to the other person, and I can say, this morning my pride was hurt, just because I want you to know you hurt my pride. And the other person may be a little bit more careful in the future. But you also will be more careful in the future. And then the next part of the meditation is that may I learn to look at myself with the eyes of understanding. When I practice that, I see how little I understand myself. Sometimes I think nobody understands me. But in fact, I don't understand myself. Always changing, being born and dying at every moment. I don't understand myself. And I want to be able to have time to come back to the island of myself in order to understand my suffering, to understand my happiness. We can meditate on a koan. Who is it who is reciting the name of Avalokiteshvara? Who is this self? But we must remember also to ask, who is it, Avalokiteshvara, whose name we are reciting? We may see that Avalokiteshvara and myself are not two separate self-entities. Not the same, not different. May I be in touch with happiness in me. When you get older, when you don't have so much energy anymore to run around and do many things, there's at the same time there is a deep happiness, and that happiness we can call the happiness of plenitude. The happiness of contentment, the happiness of feeling I have all that I need. So we can get in touch with that kind of happiness within us. When we are young, there's a certain impulse to realize many things, to do many things, and that is good. We need that. And when we're older, we feel that we've done what we need to do to a certain extent, and we don't have that impulse anymore. But with the contentment, it brings happiness. And the next thing is we want to recognize the suffering that is in us and be able to take care of it. And recognizing the happiness, recognizing the suffering are two things that go together, that we do together. They are both necessary for us to be able to become enlightened. We need both of them. In the Anapanasati Sutta, the sutta on mindfulness of breathing, we have the exercise breathing in, I experience happiness. And we really have to remember happiness we've experienced, or remember the conditions that we have for happiness when we practice that. And I've experienced joy. And then we come on to the practice, breathing in, I experience other mental formations that are not happiness and not joy. And the last thing is that breathing in and out, I practice to take care, to relax the mental formations that are not happiness and joy. And we do these things, they balance each other. So sometimes when you practice looking at the roots of your suffering, you may feel it's too much. I'm not ready. And you have every right to feel that it's too much and you're not ready. That is mindfulness. And then you practice nourishing the happiness, looking at the happiness, the conditions of happiness you already have. So you say to the suffering that you're not ready to look at, my dear little suffering, at the moment I don't have the strength to talk to you. Please go back and go to sleep in a store consciousness. And I will make myself stronger, water the seeds of happiness more, and then we can have a conversation. On the last day of we have another thing. May I nourish the seeds of happiness in me every day. I need to keep doing this every day. May I live fresh, solid, and free. Fresh as a flower, solid as a mountain. When you come back from work, home from work, before you come into the house, see your family, it might be good to stop at the door and to recognize the flowerness in yourself, the freshness in yourself, so that you have a freshness to offer to your family. While you've been at work during the day, maybe nobody's been watering your flower very much. And now when you come back home, you want to revive that flower to bring into your family. And solidity, it also means the practice of silence. Silence within yourself. Solid means not to react. And when you feel lack of solidity, the best practice is the practice of silence with the help of mindful breathing. And the last practice we do is may I be free from attachment, free from aversion, but not be indifferent. To be attached is to suffer. To be averse is to suffer. We have to feel ourselves in situations of non-attachment, in situations of non-aversion. But that does not mean to say that we build a wall around ourselves, which makes us indifferent. If somebody comes to you and say, I was angry with you this morning, and then you say, why? And they tell you, and then you say, what a silly thing to get angry about. That is kind of indifference. That person really felt the anger. That person really felt hurt. To you it may seem a little thing, but we have to respect and acknowledge other people's suffering, even though for us we feel that's not really a good reason to suffer. Telling them it's not a good reason to suffer will not help them suffer less. What they need is your deep listening. So today is the last day of our retreat. And usually on the last day, Thai would always give Dharma talk on no birth and no death. That comes from deep realization that Thai had. And the question that was put to me was, how do you practice the teaching of no birth and no death in your daily life? I think we had a 3-week retreat once called What Happens When You Die? Correct? Mm. And then at the end of the retreat, Thai answered, you don't die. So that was the answer. So to me, in those two questions, what happens when you die? You don't die. The important word is the word you. If you like, you could put I here. Huh? Put I here as well if you like. So, there is death, but you don't die. There is no you to die. If we ask the question, what happens when you die? It means there must be a you who dies. And similarly, so Thai say, you do not die. That means there's no you who dies. So our difficulty about birth and death is we think that there's an I that's born and an I that dies. Or you that's born and you that dies. So my practice of no birth and no death during my daily life is the practice of no self, anatma. So I look at the leaf on the tree, the new spring leaf, and I ask myself, does the leaf have an eye? does the leaf have a you? The leaf in terms of I and you. And then I see that the leaf is not a separate self. When the conditions were right in the spring, the leaf opened up, and then the leaf, nourished by everything around it, will blossom and bring food into the tree, and then the leaf will fall to the earth without any regret and will become one with the earth and continue to nourish the tree in the same way that it nourished the tree when it was on the tree. And the leaf and the tree are not two separate realities. Another no-self meditation I really enjoy is, we talked a little bit about microbiology, and when I walk, I know that it's not my DNA that is walking. In each of the cells in my body there is something called a mitochondrion, or mitochondria, many of them, and they are what are making it possible for me to walk. And they don't have the same DNA as the nucleus in my cells have. And they must have been separate bacteria at one time, who then came and joined up with the bacteria that have my DNA. So some microbiologists say that half of us is not us. Half of us does not have DNA that we have. So that also helped me to practice no-self. And when I am free from the idea of being a separate self, I don't need to have any fear of dying, because I see that all these elements anyway, they continue, and they were there before I was born. Another practice I do in my daily life is to see myself as my mother, my father, my ancestors, and to see myself as Thai. Doesn't mean to say that I think that I'm Thai. Don't misunderstand me. I see my mother and my father flowing into me, and I flow into them, and I see Thai flowing into me. So before I have to give a talk like today, I have to sit quietly, and I look at my father and I look at my mother, and I see them, that I am them in a sense. And I see Thai, and I see Thai in myself, and I see myself in Thai. And of course we all do that, because we all have mother, father, we all have Thai. So Thai is in all of us. And sometimes we have to have this understanding of not the same and not different. So sometimes I think, oh, something unskillful that my ancestors did. I think, oh, my ancestors did that unskillful thing, and now I have to suffer. So in a way, I feel that maybe I'm a bit of a victim. But then when I look deeply, I see that I am my ancestors. Not the same, not different. And I don't feel any blame whatsoever. And I don't feel any being a victim whatsoever. I just see that that is the way life is. That is the nature of life, that we continue each other. And I don't want to blame my suffering on anyone else. That I see that I am my ancestors. I am responsible for my suffering. Yeah. And that makes me feel good. It also, if I'm not careful, it will make me feel bad. So I have to be careful. And I see that, yes, I am my ancestors. But now I'm taking my ancestors in a different direction. Before we were going in this direction, but now I'm taking, with my practice, I can take them in. With the Thai that is in me, I can take my ancestors in a different direction. So that is my happiness. Yeah. There's a sutra where the Buddha says, we have this idea that I am born and I die. You are born and you die. But we have to ask, who is it who is born? Who is it who dies? We have the idea that I am happy, I suffer. But we have to ask, who is it that's happy? Who is it that suffers? And when we look deeply, we might see that if we're still in the historical dimension, we will see that there is happiness, there is suffering. Although if we go into the heart of understanding that brings us to the other shore, the insight that brings us to the other shore, we see there is no happiness, or happiness and suffering are not separate self-entities. Birth and death are not separate self-entities. There is birth, there is death, but they are not what we think they are. And without suffering, happiness is impossible. And without death, life is impossible. We only have to go into the forest to see that. Things dying, things living, they completely inter-are. So you can hardly say that life and death are two separate realities, or you can't say that. Which is a little bit what the insight that brings us to the other shore is saying. So we need time to be able to look deeply. We are in a hurry. We're rushing to do things. But life is short. We don't want to leave it till the last moment to start digging the well when we are thirsty. We need to begin to have time to look deeply, to be free of the fear of death and birth, So can we organize our lives in such a way that we have that time, the time to meditate, to look deeply? Because in the end, what will matter is not money. What will matter is compassion. And deep insight is only possible when there is compassion. Compassion comes from the practice of mindfulness trainings. We say mindfulness trainings, concentration, and insight. And being aware of the suffering, we know how to act in a compassionate way. Insight is not possible without that. And we need the Sangha. We need our deep happiness in the present moment.